Today, everything is about the experience.
Today, I'm speaking to Genefa Murphy, the CMO at Five9.
Yeah, one of the most important relationships a marketer can have is with their sales team.
Prior to Five9, Genefa held various global roles across product, marketing, enablement, and communications at Hewlett Packard Enterprise.
People, I think, have a certain perception of what an executive should be and how an executive should behave. Well, why? Because again, that's what they've seen, that's what they've been exposed to. They haven't seen a different approach.
So for CMO Genefa Murphy, great marketing is all about focus.
Yeah, if you're in the volume game and it's just about getting as many hits at bat as you possibly can, then, is account-based marketing applicable? Maybe, but is it going to be the most useful tool to use? Maybe not.
Welcome to Top CMO. I'm here with Genefa Murphy, the CMO of Five9. And first of all, let's start off with Five9. It's become a big company. It was in a lot of really high-profile acquisition talks not too long ago. Why is what Five9? Why is what you do so interesting? And just what's the 30-second elevator pitch for the value that you add?
I think the reason why Five9 is so interesting because today, everything is about the experience. Customer experience is at the center of differentiation. That is how companies differentiate today, by providing a great customer experience and a great employee experience. And we provide a platform to bring those two worlds together for brands around the world.
Okay, so a platform to provide a great customer experience, specifically customer call centers as a service. And how does that how does that come to life in terms of what you message about this great experiences people are going to have if they use your technology to enable their call center?
Yeah, so specifically it is around contact centers or call centers as a service. And so essentially, if you think about it nowadays, we provide our customers with a customer engagement platform. So how can they engage with their customers, whether it's people calling in to a contact center or interacting online or sending an SMS or a chat, and how do they proactively reach out and engage with their customers as well? So if you think about all of the multitude of transactions that you do online, it could be anything from online shopping to setting up a new bank account to dealing with your home insurance or your telco provider. Then you want to be able to communicate and connect with the brand, the organization that is providing you that service. And so that's what we do. We help our customers to engage with their customers. We help them to be proactive in how they communicate, and we help them to make sure that when their customers reach out to them, they can provide a good customer experience. Because how many people can think of positive experiences they've had when they've tried to call up a contact center or a call center?
Sure.
It's very slim. It's very slim. We want to change that ratio. So it's not, I can count the number of good experiences on one hand. You should be having bad experiences on one hand and good experiences on double digit counting. And right now, that equation that is a little bit inverted.
So Genefa, be honest. If you're on hold on some kind of call center in your everyday life, and you're, trying to get an airline ticket, you're trying to get something from your bank, you're doing one of these calls, are you incredibly critical? Are you tracking everything that they're messing up and in your everyday life?
Yeah, it's funny. Since I came into this world, I do. I now sit on calls, or for example, when I go on a website and use an online chat, and I'm thinking about, wow, this is how we could make this better. This is how you need to improve your IVR, which is your call flow, for example, that comes in. We should, they should be offering a callback service, or they need to improve their chatbot. So yeah, now I feel like I'm always working, because even in my own personal life, I'm like, wow, this is how you can make this customer experience better. If only you were doing X, Y, and Z.
There you go. I once heard an interview with Sting, and Sting said he couldn't enjoy music anymore because all he was doing was listening to all the construction of it. And so it was hard to do. But call centers, you probably weren't enjoying that before. Now you're just a critical thinker now. So given that, we have CMOs that have different superpowers, right? Some CMOs they're great at branding. It's all about positioning the brand. Mm-hmm. some CMOs are incredibly analytical. They really like delving into the numbers. Some CMOs are great team leaders, right? They're like a leader of people. They get people aligned and get them going. Some CMOs they're just a visionary with marketing, right? They're just great at that. Some are growth focused. They're just growth marketers. They're big experimenters. They got a marketing laboratory. How would you describe yourself? What is your superpower?
Yeah, I think I would say my superpower is that I'm not a career marketer. I came from a different background. I came from the product side of the house. I came from sales enablement. I came from go-to-market strategy. And that means, one of the most important relationships a marketer can have is with their sales team. And that's, I think, one of my greatest strengths is that ability to engage with the sales team and make sure that marketing is an equal player in that team game, that sales and marketing play together to win over the customer and to keep the customer and to delight the customer.
Well, a common dynamic is that usually between sales and marketing, like sales is complaining, marketing's giving us, crap leads. And then marketing is complaining, sales can't close a lead to save their life. We gave them all of these things. And then, unfortunately, customer success comes in and says, both of you guys aren't doing the right thing because I'm not being set up. They're being sold something else, and we have to actually deliver this and that. So there tends to be a blame game. It's not uncommon. It doesn't have to be that way. But how do you, if you have that better understanding of how these work, you've been on the other side of the aisle, how do you do that to make this all work together? Because it's very easy to blame another group.
Yeah, I it's so funny. Because that dynamic definitely exists. And I think it comes down to transparency. That's what I've always looked at it as, is complete and open transparency. I don't hide my metrics from my sales leaders and my sales counterparts. Me and my team are incredibly honest about what's working and what's not. We share our wins, but we also share where we've maybe, put some investment in that isn't getting the ROI that everybody expects. So I think it's about transparency, getting alignment on the metrics, getting alignment on the goals. It's also about owning your craft. I think that's a really important part as well, because I think you do have to think of it as a team sport. Sales have their job to do. I have no desire to be in sales. Right. I think sales is an incredibly hard job. Getting someone to part with significant amounts of money. I know as a CMO, as a purchaser, how difficult I can be. So I don't envy our sales teams having to do that on a daily basis. But marketing also has their part to play. And so I think it's about standing up for yourself as well and sort of saying, listen, this is what you're bringing to the table, sales, and that's great. And I respect that. And I trust your judgment. But this is what we're bringing to the table as marketing as well. And asking for and earning that respect and trust. Because too often I see marketing teams who just bow down to sales and kowtow to sales. And that's not going to help anyone, because that means that you end up demotivating your marketing team and you don't get the best diversity of thought in coming up with an end outcome to really please that customer.
It makes sense. Well, so now you're spending a lot of time, you mentioned to me, thinking about account-based marketing. And so you understand, two types of marketing. You could say, okay, we're going to have a really big top of the funnel, like lots of people we're going to go after. We're going to filter it down. Or we could say we're going to laser focus on these specific accounts. It's like the ones we really want. Maybe it's a large account. It's a whale. It's worth a lot of revenue. Mm-hmm. It could be that it's very strategical. You're moving into a new sector, maybe a new geographic market, something else. So why are you prioritizing account-based marketing in terms of your overall approach to kind of laser focus? Why is that an important part of your toolkit?
Yeah, so I think for me, it really depends on where you are as a company and where you are in terms of both your marketing and your selling maturity. So if you're, if you're in the volume game and it's just about getting as many hits at bat as you possibly can, then, is account-based marketing applicable? Maybe. But is it going to be the most useful tool to use? Maybe not. However, if you start to get into a place where, you really need to prioritize the leads that you're working on, you've done all the usual things like scoring and nurturing and all of those different pieces, then account-based marketing is a really useful tool to be able to prioritize and focus your efforts, and also make sure that you're truly going after the customers who meet your ideal customer profile. I think that's that's something that is actually lacking. Creating an IDP, an ideal customer profile, is such a fundamental of marketing. But yet I think with the rise in agile marketing and performance and growth marketing, sometimes people forget that. And they don't look at things like segmentation. Who is the right type of person and persona to be able to target our message at, and to be able to target our solution at? So I think it comes down to your company maturity and what are your overall objectives. I think you always have to have a balance between awareness, preference, and perception. But account-based marketing, given where we are as Five9, helps us to be a little bit more targeted with who we're going after. We know where our product works well, and maybe for those markets where it's not as applicable. So we've learned that through many years of selling and winning. And so we can now apply that into a little bit more of a targeted approach.
That sure makes sense. I mean, we have a global marketing agency, top worldwide. We sometimes actually experience clients who a problem arises from incredible success, which is, let's say they're a prolific team in search engine optimization, or bring in lots of people that come all over, right? Because people are searching out for you. Then the problem is you get all of these inbound leads, you get all of these things, but then it's easy to lose your focus because you're like, they're over here, they're over here. There's it's like the movie Up, like squirrel,
yeah,
squirrel, right? You're seeing all of those come in, and it's easy to lose your focus. And so what you're saying is, I like that. It's actually an interesting way of taking the value of account-based marketing. Because a lot of times people just do account-based marketing because they're like, yeah, these are the companies that move the needle, right? And that's clear. But you're actually talking about defining your ideal customer. And it forces you to do that. You can't really do account-based marketing if you don't define it. So it puts a sort of discipline and focus, which is a benefit of it.
It's not always about size and scale, right? Sometimes, of course, in account-based marketing, you go after, we want to get X percentage of the Fortune 100. Great. Okay. But you might also say as well, like for Five9, we have a very healthy mid-market business as well that we go after. We have our enterprise customers and our Fortune 100 customers, and we've got those big customers that we go after. And of course, we target them. But we've also got companies who are smaller, who maybe have no desire to get up into that Fortune 100, and we have a solution that fits them as well. And the other thing as well that I think you've got to think about talking about marketing and sales is context switching. Context switching is incredibly hard. So think about if you've got a limited set of lead development reps or business development reps who are having to qualify all of these leads that are coming in. Their ability to context switch between the needs of an enterprise customer and maybe the needs of a commercial or a smaller customer, that's pretty hard to do. And if you've only got one pool of LDRs or lead development reps, asking them to constantly context switch becomes tiresome on them. And also as well, how can you make sure that they're giving the right pitch to the right level of customer with this vast volume of leads coming in as well? So I think that's the other thing, is just thinking about your team burnout and your team's ability to consume the volume of opportunity that you bring in as a marketing team.
I see. So to kind of paraphrase what you're saying that it takes a lot of mind share for a person or a team to be like, I'm thinking one way, I'm thinking that 2 + 2 = 4. Then suddenly I got to do 9 divided by 3 = 3. It's just a different way of thinking, and to just jump between those things become difficult. But the benefit of account-based marketing based on an ideal customer profile is you kind of honing in on that, and then that allows you to optimize a little bit.
Exactly.
If you had a series of conversations, you're like, I didn't quite close that one, but they were just hung up on not seeing examples of use cases that really value. You can then apply it to the next one. But if you've got a context switch, then suddenly you got new use cases, new case studies, all this other stuff. Makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, and then you end up creating marketing and enablement that's too generic. And then you end up creating messaging that's too generic, and it's not specific to either what your company does or what your buyers need. And then that becomes problematic too.
So then the other problem when you would have then is you're saying that essentially then you got to meet all these different profiles. Then you're just going to like dumb this down to a level that sort of goes, okay, it fits all of this, but then you potentially could lose out to competitors who are just like drilling in and being more specific. They're building it for that case.
Yeah, and it's really tough, right? And I always say it's something that someone once said to me: it's better to be different than to be better. And I think when you try and dumb down a message so that it can reach and appeal to all audiences, you end up either creating a very generic, watered down message, or you start to get into differentiation through, well, we're faster than, we're cheaper than, we're better than. And that's not compelling. That doesn't turn into value. That isn't going to give the customer true value. It's better to think how you can approach a problem differently.
Sure. And it's also difficult because in crowded spaces or competitive spaces, some of those messages, everyone's saying. You're thinking like number of places that say we're data driven, right? We really look at the data, right? Everyone says that. So you better be able to differentiate yourself on how you use data and analytics in a really original, differentiated way, because everyone's going to say that.
Yeah, who's going to say, oh, no, we don't help you optimize your business. We don't help you save costs. No one's ever going to put that out there as a marketing message.
Yes, we are incredibly slow. We are just...
Yes. We are hard to do business with.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's difficult. So who is your ideal customer? And it would be, who is your ideal customer and how did you determine that? So if someone else listening, how did you figure out what that would be?
Yeah, so I think, for Five9, like I said, we've got a few different segments. We've got our commercial segment. That's where the ideal customer is a little bit smaller. They're maybe just, maybe they're a smaller business. They've got individual contact center, maybe just one contact center. So that's one grouping. Then we've got a mid-market sort of set of customers. Those are customers who are looking to grow. They're looking to do more with technology. They're looking to optimize and scale their business. And then we've got the enterprise customers who are the Fortune 500. And in those cases, those customers tend to be looking a little bit more at things like digital transformations. How do they digitize the full end-to-end customer experience? How do they connect their customer experience with their employee experience and do more of a company-wide digital transformation? So it really varies. At the top end, like I said, strategic and enterprise, that tends to be digital transformation projects. As you go further down into the big market and commercial, it often does become about optimization. It becomes about value for money. It becomes about finding ways to reach their audience in a more scalable fashion.
Okay, so when you take that and you extend that tactically, whether that's account-based marketing or some other thing, how do you set up your campaigns? I know you're a performance marketer. You care about measurement and you care about scalability. So how does that get in? I mean, do you have 3 different drip campaigns running as your base campaign, and then it branches out from there for each of these segments? Is there something else? How do you start bring this to a practical level, just like how you're reaching people and having these touch points?
Yeah, so the first thing is that we actually look at what our sort of messaging hierarchy is and what are the main problems that we're solving, and then tweaking each of those nurture campaigns based on the audience and based on the problem we're seeing. So for example, there's a segment of customers where we focus more on business agility. Those are the customers who haven't moved to the cloud yet and who maybe have an on-premise contact center and then looking to move to the cloud. So we have one set of nurtures that goes out and says, okay, if they're customers that are going from on-premise to the cloud, this is sort of phase 1 that we take them. And we put all of this in a sort of maturity model. The second piece is to look at, okay, let's assume that they've moved to the cloud. Now, one of the challenges that they're dealing with is how to scale their team and how to leverage the power of AI and automation to scale their teams. Great. That's another set of ongoing, always on nurtures that we have. And then the third and the fourth area looks at analytics. So, for example, and analytics crosses across all of them, right? Are they more analytics driven, more insights driven? Do they want to do customer journey mapping? Do they want to look at how do they integrate their contact center into their CRM, as an example? And then the fourth area is are they looking more at things like empowering their agents and their supervisors? So are they thinking about workforce engagement and gamification and performance management of their employees? So we have baseline nurtures across each of those four pillars. And then depending on where a customer comes into the journey, we can sort of tell based on the content that they're downloading or interacting with, which ones of those nurture journeys do we want to then send them through.
I see. Well, makes sense. And then how do you then, if those are kind of the base sort of nurture campaigns, what happens then? So someone responds to that. Where does it go? How does it sort of branch out from there? I mean, I think one of the, and if you're doing this in a way that's sort of an marketing automation sort of way, one of the challenges is that people either want to be incredibly complex, right? There's like all these branches, all these things, and it gets overwhelming. Or else people have you actually see quite large companies that have like one track, right? That was so complex at the end, so it's just like, we've just slimmed this down to like one sort of thing because we couldn't do it. So how does it branch out from there? You got these four tracks. How complex does it get?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say we have taken a simpler approach versus a more complex approach. The other nuance that we have to think about is, are we speaking with prospects or are we speaking with existing customers? Because those are two parallel audiences that we sort of reach out to and that we work with. So, for example, both of those audiences have newsletters, but the content of the newsletters, I would probably say there's about 50% of overlap and then 50% differentiation in what might be the theme of those newsletters. So let's just take that. Let's assume that somebody has come in, they've downloaded one of our assets, they're part of our nurture, they've opted in to get the newsletter. A prospect, maybe in that newsletter, we talk about overarching campaigns, which are relevant to all customers, their points of view, thought leadership, things that we feel are important that we're hearing in the market. And they may focus more on the prospect newsletter on things like, well, come and hear about us from a webinar. Come and participate in a meetup. Come and, do some of your own research and we'll point them to blogs and social content. Whereas on the install base side, that's where our customers are already familiar with our solutions and their needs are a little bit different because they're either looking to optimize their investment in Five9 or potentially become more aware, not with our core offering, but what some of our adjacent offerings are, either that we offer ourselves or that we offer through our partners. And there we do things like lunch and learns, hands-on demo workshops, customer references. Customer references is a great example. For a prospect, the customer reference or customer webinar that we take is much more about helping the prospect to build an internal business case and taking stats and facts, for example, so that they can go back to their management team and say, okay, well, let's just say I'm moving from on-premise to the cloud. Here's 5 examples of customers that have done this before with Five9, and here's some of the savings that they got. You take that same customer reference and use it in an install base, the tone and content will be different. So we might say, actually, we want to use that in the context of the customer a little bit further down the path when they've rolled out the solution. They've got a different set of ROI. And instead of talking about just the end stats and facts about their ROI, we want to talk about the how. How did they do it? How did they onboard a new part of the Five9 portfolio? How did they leverage a partner solution? So I think you've also got to think about who your audience is as well, and sort of tweaking that content so that it's more applicable to either a prospect or an existing customer who you're trying to retain and grow.
Sure, makes a lot of sense. And how does that work then? How has it changed? Back in 2021, Five9 was part of a high-profile acquisition by Zoom in the media a lot because at the time it was, I think, one of maybe the top 2 largest, in the year, something close to a $15 billion valuation for Five9. And then That ended up not going through. Parties kind of pulled out. We don't get to see all the specifics here. But then how does that impact? Well, there's sort of that high profile event, either existing customers or new prospects hear about this, it's in the news, and then it doesn't go through. How has that affected your marketing? That's kind of an unusual event that maybe not a lot of CMOs have.
Yeah. So, the thing was there's a very special thing about Five9. We have an incredibly close relationship with our customers. So we've got probably about 2,500 customers, and we have a very close relationship with them. So we had been very transparent with them all along the way. Zoom had been a partner of ours beforehand. We have a number of customers who use Five9 and Zoom together back then and still today. And so we've just been talking with our customers ongoing, letting them know what's happening, and letting them know the benefit of what potentially a joint solution could be. But then also as well, I think you have to think about the different buyers, because sometimes the buyers for contact center and UC, Unified Communications and Collaboration, are the same, and sometimes they're not as well. So for some, there was a portion of our customers where it was like, yeah, this is great because now I just have to deal with one company. And another set of customers who were like, that's great, I don't deal with UC, so I'll just keep working with you as I've worked with you before. So I think the key is open and transparent communication with customers, and just being very honest with them about why the different events transpired as they are. And the thing was our stakeholders, our shareholders, our customers had every confidence in Five9 as a standalone company. We've proven that through our results, which is great. And Zoom remains an incredibly strong partner of ours. And we're still winning deals alongside them today and have a really great partnership. And so I think customers saw that before. They saw the transparency throughout. And then they've seen it still happen afterwards. I think the worst thing that could have happened is if we would have shut down communications to our customers and not been transparent about how these different companies can work together and be successful, but how we can also be successful standalone companies as well.
So you had that ramped up, and you were still actively communicating. You weren't assuming that, these kind of deals go through as long as there's like a quiet period. There's other things you have to do. You were kind of continuing to message back and forth. And then when it what did you do when news came out that like, hey, maybe this might not go through or stuff like that? Did you do anything proactively at that point, specifically want a message, or how did you?
Yeah, so obviously, you have to be careful because you've got to make sure that you follow all of the various regulatory, things that you've got to be subject to whenever it comes to mergers and acquisitions. But we had, with all the information that we could share when we could share it, we shared that with our top customers and stayed close to them. And we made sure that immediately, after the notification went out to the street, we spoke to our shareholders. We spoke to our top customers. We prepared our sales teams with FAQs about what to say and how to answer questions. And we invited our customers to ask us any question that they potentially wanted to. And many of our senior leaders, myself, our president, our CEO, got on the phone one-on-one with customers and just had open and transparent conversations with them.
Makes sense. And so how do you... for where you are now as a marketer, one of the things that you said, which was interesting, was we came up on more of a product track. And I was looking at your background here and how that kind of jump came over. But you obviously did with some very big companies, like Micro Focus, Hewlett, Packard, ones that are very large. But how did you make the jump over from if I go far enough back in your LinkedIn, I see IT consultants, I see business consultant, I see senior project manager. We're going a little ways back. So how did that sort of transition happen? And would you have expected that you'd be a CMO too?
No, I wouldn't have expected that I would have been a CMO, to be honest with you. I was always a product person. When I was a consultant, I was implementing SAP, right? So I was always a product person. But I think it's like it really is a natural evolution, because when I was a consultant, it was about working with customers on what was their business problem and how could technology solve it. And then from that, I was implementing software. And then, when you're implementing software, you very quickly understand the limitations of what certain pieces of software can and can't do. So you automatically start to get into the realm of what product management is all about, which is understanding what the market needs, understanding what technology is doing, and bringing those two together. And then when you're in product management, you find yourself not just thinking about, well, what's the roadmap for this product, but how am I going to make money with this product? What should the pricing be? How am I going to make sure that the feature that I'm building has a compelling value proposition and people are actually going to want to buy it? So you start to get into some of the marketing disciplines like messaging and positioning, and you start to think about, well, especially if you've got a PLG model, a product-led growth model, where you're looking at, well, how do I get more trials for my product? And how do I then convert those trials? You start to get into the marketing discipline of e-commerce and digital commerce and website transactions. And so for me, it was always just a bit of a natural evolution. Each area that I was in, from being a consultant to a product manager to then being in product marketing and so forth, I got little glimpses into the other worlds. And then I just decided to go and learn more about them, because I think that's where you create, if you can understand all the other parts of the go-to-market ecosystem, I think it just helps you again to have better conversations, because you see where somebody else is coming from. And in particular with marketing, I think people think they know what marketing is. They think they know how marketing works. And they don't realize until they're in it how complex B2B marketing can be. From the sense of the technology stack that you often manage, there is a ton of integrations. There is more technology at the hands of marketers than there ever has been. From the data side to it, to how do you manage your KPIs and manage volume, value, and velocity, through to the creative side to it. Events is a great example. You turn up at an event as a customer or a partner and you see all the shiny outside stuff. You don't realize all the little stuff going on behind the scenes, what it has taken to coordinate the content, create consistent content, the production teams that are working on it, the scheduling, the rehearsals. And so for me, it's always been just interesting to be able to sort of delve into other worlds and really understand from the inside of those worlds how they work.
So what would your advice be to someone who's, let's say, 5 to 10 years from being a CMO? Mm-hmm. They want to be prepared. They want an upward career track. They want to be considered for those positions. What if you're going to go back and be 5 to 10 years before where you are now? What advice would you give yourself, or what advice would you give that other person?
Yeah, I would definitely say go do something outside of marketing. Right, I love marketing. Marketing is a passion of mine. It's a beautiful blend of science and creativity. But go do something else outside of marketing, because I think a lot of times, again, I'll go back to people assume certain things about marketing, and sometimes marketing have to work a little bit harder for their credibility, for their seat at the table. And sometimes by having taken a role outside of marketing, it can help you boost your credibility, and it can help you boost your understanding of why are we building these campaigns? Why are we doing these events? How are they really going to impact revenue and pipeline and bottom line of the business?
Well, I think that's good advice actually for anyone in a type of industry or a type of company that tends to be led by certain divisions that might be different than marketing, right? So you have there can be companies that are marketing-led companies, right?
100%.
Marketing is front and center. It's driving the whole company. For those, it's not often a credibility question. You're driving the company. Everyone knows what you do is important, right? It's good. If you're a CMO at Coca-Cola, people understand what you're doing. This is hugely important, right? You don't have to convince them. But particularly as we start getting into more, either it's B2B spaces, but especially technology-driven B2B spaces. And there could be companies that are, engineering-driven companies. Texas Instruments was a company like that, right? Driven by engineers, how they think. It could be product-driven companies. It could be other things. I mean, it could be just like, enterprise sales teams that are dominant in the company.
Yeah.
So if you're outside of that, if you're in marketing, being aware of that and having some of those other skills, what you're saying, to talk the language, to be like you're part of that, that can be hugely important, especially if you're at a company where your skill is not the dominant skill in the company.
Yeah, and it helps create relationships, right? To say, oh, yeah, I get where you're coming from because I've been there, right? I've been in that scenario. I've had to do that. And so I think you're exactly right. In B2C, it's a different case because I think in B2C, it's probably more important to go and diversify yourself within the marketing function and decide, do you want to be a specialist in branding? Do you want to be a specialist in demand gen? Do you want to be a specialist in segmentation? Or are you looking to be a sort of have a broad ability to cover all of those areas? So in B2C, I think you diversify within the marketing function. And in B2B, potentially look for diversification outside of the marketing function.
Sure. Absolutely. So you've also been an advocate for women in technology historically a little bit more male dominated. You're also you're a member of the C-suite as a woman. I'd love to know your perspective on that. Do you feel like there is a glass ceiling in the industry that would be different than other industries, or do you not? Do you feel that it's, women and men are on an equivalent footing, or do you see things every day? And then what do you do to try to make things more equitable as a woman in a leadership position?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And honestly, it's one that I struggle with because I hate to think that there is any type of glass ceiling but there is. And there are biases that people have, especially, with females. And especially in technology.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think it is especially in technology, do you think?
I think especially in technology, people expect you, if you're in the C-suite, to maybe be in marketing or be in like HR or legal, potentially. And just, even if people don't come at it from a place of malice, sometimes there are just inherent biases that people have, because you got to remember sometimes, maybe they grew up in a different environment where there weren't as many females in leadership positions. Or
just it's I think for anyone that's worked for a while, and to take it away from the gender discussion, it's like pattern recognition. People try to recognize patterns they see. And if you've been around a whole bunch of folks that look a certain way or talk a certain way or, dress a certain way, you tend to recognize patterns. Oh, this is what a person is supposed to be like. And maybe to your point, there's no malice at all, but you're just biased by the patterns you tend to recognize because that's all you've been around. That's all you see.
Well, yeah, and it's also like executives, right? Just forget about anything else, but executives. People, I think, have a certain perception of what an executive should be and how an executive should behave. And if, then you're like, well, why? Because again, that's what they've seen. That's what they've been exposed to. They haven't seen a different approach. And so I do think biases still exist. I do think that it's harder. There are lots of opportunities out there. I think there's a ton of tremendous awareness that is created for diversity in tech. And I think that's really positive, and I'm very happy to see that. But I think it's something that we just always have to keep top of mind. And even myself, I'll be the first to admit, when it comes to things like hiring, I have to make a conscious effort to remind myself, hey, Genefa, we're hiring for these roles. Have we really thought about diversity? Whether it's looking at diversity of sex, race, religion, all different types of diversity. Are we making a concerted effort? And I think you constantly have to remind yourself, and you have to keep yourself in check to just keep it top of mind.
And is that to be equitable, or is that to also, does it relate to performance? Relate to how you want the best team you can have that accomplish the most results?
I think it's both. I mean, I want the best team that I can possibly have. I'm a firm believer that diversity of thought diversity of background leads to better creativity and better ideas coming together. But I think as well, you fall into habits, right? You've got a rec that's open and you need to get the rec closed, and you want to get someone in that role as soon as possible. So you're like, okay, this person, excellent. This person ticks all the boxes and they've got qualifications, and you have to remind yourself, whoa, hang on. Have I just been given a pool of candidates that were the easiest to get to from the most likely sources? Or have I really tried to get different people's opinions? And that's why, for example, like in my marketing team, I'm super excited that in the past couple of months, we've hired people that have come in from sales into marketing, and we've hired people that have come in from things like technical account managers, and they're coming into marketing because that shows diversity of thought, right? So I think it's sometimes we just get caught up in the daily grind, and you have to remind yourself, take a step back and be purposeful about who you're recruiting and why.
So I want to end on a lightning round and get your thoughts on a few topics that are very common for B2B tech companies to be involved in. I want to get your opinion on that. So first one, analyst relations. Overrated, underrated, and how do you approach it?
I can't say anything, but you have to do it, because if any of my analysts here, they'll be like, "What, Genefa? You don't value us." No, I think analyst relations is incredibly important. Why? Because analysts, they speak to so many customers, so many vendors. They spend their lives thinking about business problems and technology. And the good analysts, no BS, give you an honest assessment of who you are. The bad analysts are the ones who are in it for the money and the cushy trips and the great analyst events. Those are the analysts that I'm like, if that's what your objective is, then great for you. But if you're going to provide objective and you're going to provide critical feedback and different perspectives on how we can be better as a company, then great, bring it on. I'm all for analyst relations.
Okay, well said. Number 2, data studies and white papers. Overrated, underrated, and how do you approach that? Right, I'm talking about the state of, customer communications, the state of call centers 2023 report. Overrated, underrated, and how do you or underrated, and how do you approach it?
I think underrated. Initially, my gut said overrated because there are so many of them out there and they all say the same thing. But I think they are underrated when people don't use them properly and people aren't thoughtful about the questions that they are asked. So, as an example, we do these studies as well at Five9, but the person who leads this on my team, Scott Coleman, he is really good about going out and looking at all the surveys that already exists and basically saying, well, if all of this already exists and we've got data on it, even if it's not ours, let's find the white space. And let's ask about the white space. And the other thing is what we've done, we're about to do a business report. We went out to our customer advisory board and we sent like a preview of the questions to the customer advisory board and said, hey, here's the 20 questions we want to ask. Share it with your team. Is this useful? Tell us the ones that are not. Tell us the ones that are. So I think it's really critical to go to a sampling of, it's first of all critical to look at what's already out there. And don't get hung up if it doesn't have your logo on it or your name on it, right? If the data's already out there, then customers can already get it. What's the point in them getting a version of it that's pink versus a version of it that's blue, right?
Okay.
There isn't much value in that. That's not value to the customer just because it's got your logo on it. It might be valuable to your sales team, but it's not valuable to the customer. So first of all, look at what data already exists. Secondly, and find the white space. Secondly, go and ask some of your existing customers or your target audience, if they would find this data useful, and would they pay for that report, right? Even if it's a nominal amount. And if they'd be like, probably not, the likelihood is they probably don't find value in it then. So then why are you asking the question, and why are you finding the data? You're doing it to inflate your own ego.
Sure. And then ultimately, I think thinking about you first versus me first, meaning, are we serving you? We're providing some value to you, and then our message just gets right along with it, or is it me first? It's kind of a self-serving exercise. We're not adding any real value.
Exactly.
Value, great thing. If you're not adding value, just serving yourself and checking another box that you're doing it, then maybe not.
Yeah, I have Donald Miller's a story brand in my head. Make the customer the hero. The customer is always the hero.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the next lightning round question, which is branding in the B2B tech space. Branding, overrated or underrated, and how do you approach it? Just the brand, your voice, your persona. So many B2B companies I hear now, like we want to market like a lifestyle brand. How do we do that? Okay, branding, overrated or underrated?
Yeah, I think can be slightly overrated. It's like, own who you are. Like, you're not a lifestyle company. You're a technology provider. You're providing a service. Own it. That's valuable. Not everybody needs to be a lifestyle company. A B2C brand that I was talking about the other day with an agency that I really appreciate is Nike, or Nike, how I would say it, because if you look at some of their photography and their imagery and how they approach their website, what appeals to me about them is they own their athleticism. They own themselves as a sports brand. They haven't tried to over pivot to the lifestyle brand like some other of their competitors have. They do it, they have elements of it, but they really own being a sports brand.
I see. Final lightning round question, which is, let's say you do that differentiated data study. You're trying to spread it around the world. You're going to implement a global PR program. So you're going to earned media around the world. So global PR, overrated or underrated? How do you approach it?
Underrated, but you got to do it right. Great example of this is last year we did a campaign for Reimagine CX. We did a piece of earned media. We put a person, one of our team actually, on the side of a cliff in Wales, and showed that you could run a contact center from anywhere, even the side of a cliff in Wales. And we basically, for a period of about 2 weeks, we were trending on Reuters as their second highest top topic. Not because we put a person on the side of a cliff, not because Reuters cared about contact center, but because we tapped into something that was really key, which was remote working, agent burnout, moving to the cloud, and creating great customer experiences.
So, which sounds like what we would call a great strategic context around doing that. So much, it's not just the product or what it is, but it's actually all the stuff you put around it, which are tapping to all these cultural themes and things that are happening post-pandemic and all these sorts of things to make it more relevant, even when you're doing a stunt.
Press releases are not going to get you noticed. Right, they're not good. Like, everyone does press releases. Everyone does. Let's do a press release. I'm like, I don't know why people seem to think that press releases are magic, and that all of a sudden you create a press release and it creates all of this noise and attention. It's like, no, there's a lot of work that goes into making something newsworthy. And newsworthy is that you have to tap into what is happening in the culture at the moment, at the point in time, and you have to be ready to jump on it and to be relevant, and then amplify it yourself.
Well said, Genefa Murphy. There you go. Basically, press releases, overrated, thoughtful, strategic, newsworthy PR, underrated. So for CMO Genefa Murphy, great marketing is all about focus. Focus on your ideal customer. Focus on segmentation. Focus on nurturing campaigns with dynamic content. Focus on making information flow between sales and marketing. The result? A proven approach to marketing that is simple enough to scale. For Top CMO, I'm Ben Kaplan.